Welcome to Coffee with Bible and Pop Culture. There is a space for everyone at this table. We are here to ask hard questions, to have honest conversations, and to journey together. We're here to talk about the things that matter most to us and to remind you that you're not alone. Our heart behind this time is to ask hard questions and to really dialogue about what we're going through. Let's engage, explore, and enjoy. Hey friends, this is Sabbath, Director of Community Development at Bible and Pop Culture. Guys, for joining us today for our first ever Coffee with Bible and Pop Culture, and thanks for hanging in for the technical difficulties. We're so happy to be in this space with you guys. We are an online magazine and soon to be nonprofit organization. This month we are celebrating 6 months. And we're looking forward to many more months to come. So today we're chatting with Marisa Buhr Mizunaka. She is a team member, a wordsmith, and an author of an article in this month's issue called Coffee Culture. So today we are talking about coffee. So before we get started, we would love to hear from you guys in the chat where you're watching from and what is in your cup if you brought one with you today. Marisa, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a Brazil from a company called Greater Good, and it is
Anybody else
refreshingly
drinking
light.
coffee from Brazil? All right. Well, we are going to get started. Mia's drinking. We have someone drinking water. Very good. So we are just going to dive in to the article that you wrote for us this month. And we're going to open up time for discussion at the end of our talk. So if you guys have anything that you want to ask questions about, or if you want to ask Marisa or about the article, just type them in the chat below, and then we will get to them at the end of our time together. So we are going to... also, where are you guys watching from?
I'm watching from Oahu.
And I am coming from Hilo. Anybody else? We had one guest say they had Big Javalia coffee earlier. Oh, and you're dipping into Dr. Pepper. I think I can show your answer on the screen. There you go. Hey, Sean. We have Ann Ford from Kona. Welcome. And we have Mia Burke from Grant, New Mexico. That's so fun. Okay. So, Marisa, your article this month was called Coffee Culture. And at the beginning of your article, you wrote about taking us on a journey to explore why it's important to invest attention into relational coffee. So for those of us who will read your article later, can you tell us more about that journey and why it's become important to you?
Yeah, so I've been a barista for 5 years, and I've been in specialty coffee for 3 of those years. My own passion for coffee just naturally brought me deeper into just how it's made, like its impact, the people in it. And even though like now I'm acquainted with the field in a way that is so much deeper than before, there's still so much more to go. And I'm like, if I don't even know, if I'm just like at the beginning of knowing the coffee world after 5 years, like what is the hope for people who are just like consuming coffee? So I was hoping to give people sort of a primer and a wake-up call for to just pay more attention to coffee and to its importance, and not just like the taste, but its actual impact on the environment and on people and culture. And yeah, that's definitely been something that's been a passion of mine, and it's only gotten deeper as I go further into the world of coffee.
So good. Okay, so in your article, you also talked about that you went to your first cupping, and you described that when you started, you felt a little bit like unqualified to be there, but as you went, can you tell us a little bit about that experience, and like just for those of us who haven't ever experienced that, can you kind of explain a little bit about what that looks like and what the purpose of that is?
Yeah, for sure. So in a cupping, you're going to be smelling the dry coffee, which will give you the aroma, and then or the there's fragrance and aroma. One is wet, one is dry, and I can't remember which one is which. But you experience the fragrance, the aroma. Then when you actually brew it, then you're tasting the coffee as it cools, so from hot to cool. And in that process of cupping, that's what that's called, you're discerning the taste notes. So if you've ever seen taste notes on a coffee bag, that's where it comes from. And they're called Q graders. It's something that's like a very long, arduous process to be qualified as a Q grader. But and the reason why it's so difficult, like, to be a Q grader, and why cupping is intimidating, is because Q graders are masters of their sensory taste, smell. They're masters of describing everything in like coffee, and it can be really personal and specific. Like, one that I will always remember is like Asian pear rind. I'm like, but I mean, I tasted it after they said, they're like, oh, Asian pear rind, and I'm like, you're right. But there's also standards of language across the board, since it is a global community, the coffee world. And there's, a standard of language you have to use at that level. So anyway, plus also in the coffee world, you would think like baristas are like here, but they're actually like at the lowest of the low. It's like, we're nothing. But so the Q grader at this particular session was the roaster of one of our roasters at my cafe, and she's like so serious and like capable, and it's just like, I don't know anything. And that's why it was like so cool to hear her say, like, she said, like, whenever someone wants to like quit the coffee industry, that she always encourages them to go deeper, because there's always something more you can learn. There's always something else you can do in coffee that could be closer to where your passion is, because it's just such a like big field now, and it's only going to expand because it's so young. But like I said earlier, even after 5 years and all my attention and investment into coffee, I still really am only at the beginning of everything. And it's amazing how like scientific the coffee field can be, and that also is intimidating, because I write. I say words. I don't know science.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've had to like lean into, going further down the rabbit hole into more professional copy. Yeah.
Let us know if you guys have ever been to a cupping in the comments, and your experiences or takeaways from that was. So good, Marissa. Okay, so in your article, you also talked about being intentional about our choice in what we drink. And so a takeaway from your article was maybe next time we go to order coffee, which looks a lot different nowadays, we understand. But the next time we do get to be in the same space as a barista, you mentioned trying to ask where the origins of our coffee are from. And I know for me, I would love to engage in that kind of conversation, although I'm not sure how exactly I would do it. So I was wondering if you could walk us through, we could role play it a little bit of how to ask our barista where the origins of the coffee are from. And if you're barista out there, sorry, maybe take notes before you go back to work. We might be asking you.
So the simplest question that I usually ask, I drink espresso mostly, so the thing I usually ask when I'm at the register, especially like if somewhere I've never been, is, hey, what's in the hopper today? And that means like the hopper is what contains the beans that builds the espresso. So, that is kind of like a little bit of like lingo you can use. What's in the hopper, or like what's on batch today, or like what are your pour overs like today? What's your origin offering? Just anything like that. You could just simply ask, what's the origin of your espresso, or can you tell me about your espresso? Can you tell me about what you're serving today? I don't know much about coffee, but I wanted to ask like what the origin was, stuff like that. Coming from a place of wanting to learn is always like the best approach. As a barista, like I definitely can get hurt if someone comes from like, oh hey, like I know everything about coffee. Whoa. I'm like, even if you do, like I don't want to talk to you anymore. But they definitely as baristas, we always, especially in the specialty coffee industry, the emphasis is always on learning. It's always on educating. Like if you go to a specialty coffee cafe, chances are that they offer classes, and they offer like, if you ask them a question, they will like go the extra mile to help you understand, because that's really what we want, is to help people make great coffee at home and appreciate great coffee. So.
Yeah. Did you mention where you're working at?
I did not. I work at a cafe in Kaka'ako called 9 Bar Honolulu.
So when you get a chance, if you're on Oahu, go visit Marissa.
We'd love to see you.
We have some comments coming in, and I was going to do it at the end, but maybe since we're just finished talking about it, I'm going to just put them up right here. So Mia said, before reading Marissa's article, I'd never heard of cupping, and that it was fun to learn about, and how much is so much like wine tasting.
Yeah, it is. I think I mentioned a little bit of
and then Sean says, I remember my very first cup of coffee in a tent near Wonju, Korea in 1993, doing weather support to the Army, freezing in January. You had your first cup of coffee in 1993. Wow. It was from an MRE pack, lots of cream and sugar, and it hit the spot. Oh my gosh. What an experience. What an experience your first cup of coffee was. And you've been hooked ever since, still working on the perfect cup. It's good.
What are your
Okay, so at the end of your article, if you guys haven't read it yet, go back and read it. It's on our website, 501popculture.com. And the whole article is packed with a depth of history and all the different stages, I guess I'd say, that we have gone through as coffee connoisseurs and as consumers. And at the end, you gave us some practical tips to starting small and reducing our footprint, that even as a consumer, as someone who's just going to go buy a cup of coffee, we're making an impact on the world with our decision. And so could you explain again those small steps that you suggested to the reader of how we can reduce our footprint and then increase our impact at the same time?
Yeah, this is something that I think I've only really like paid attention to since becoming involved in the coffee community, because the whole community is really like environmentally aware, which I think is so cool. And I just think like coffee is amazing, and I really want, through my article, I was hoping for people to continue to give it the attention that it deserves. But it's, in the long run, it really is only one thing, which is why I wanted to throw in those extra steps at the end, because holistically, if I imagine the person at the end of my coffee, I have to imagine that there's a person at the end of everything that I use and consume. And in that, I know I can't change everything as much as I would love for my impact to be zero. But I know that I can start now, even if it's very small. And the biggest, simplest way that we can start is to just reduce. Like, do everything you're doing now, just do it a little bit less. Like, that's, I mean, in the middle of the pandemic, that's what we're seeing now. The world is getting a little bit of a rest because we're just doing everything so much less driving and flying and producing. And you can already see a lot of impact from just like 2 months. And so imagine if we all every day reduced our impact just one step. And one way to do that, in terms of like coffee and visiting cafes, is bring your own water bottle, bring your own reusable cup, refrain from any single use, and buy what you need. Those are just little things that I try to incorporate into my life. It's like, always have your own cups, utensils, and don't like buy more stuff than you need of coffee or groceries or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you so much for your words of inspiration and encouragement. We're going to open it up now. If anybody has any questions or anything that you guys wanted us to mention here in our first live, you can just drop them in the comments below. And then we'd love to just chat with you guys before we sign off here. While we wait for questions to come in, just a reminder that you can find our content online at bibleandpopculture.com. We put out an issue once a month. And this month's theme, was crossing cultures. So there is a bunch of articles covering a variety of topics of how we can engage with culture, and we can engage in the ways that we've grown a passion for, and to make a difference in those areas. So go ahead and check out bibleandpopculture.com, and it's free to subscribe. If you want to subscribe to our email so you won't miss any updates, you can do that at bibleandpopculture.com. I think I can type it in here. We have one question. What is your favorite cup of joe?
Ooh, gosh. I find I have so many answers. Right now it's gonna be a Honduras St. Frank's, which is the roaster I mentioned in the article. Truly like one of the most complex cups of coffee. And it's like, I love it because it's not like normally you're gonna find either like on the fruity side or on the earthy side, and like that's mostly your spectrum is like earthy, savory, or fruity and sweet. But this Honduras is like ethereal. It's very pine and juniper, but it also has some chocolate. It's very herbaceous, I suppose, which is a flavor note that I'm attracted to. So yeah, it'll be a Honduras, or if I really want something sweet, any natural Ethiopia. You know, it always hits the spot, as cliche as that is.
I am a very simple drinker. In fact, to be honest, my husband would tell you that I don't really like coffee because I I have to load it up, to be honest. So I'm a little bit of a vanilla latte kind of person. And currently I've been drinking the Pike's Place roast, which kind of brings me back to growing up in Washington State.
Nice.
We have one more question. What makes the different flavors? Is it a roasting thing or is it an additional ingredient?
Great question. This is huge. So, just like wine, it comes from terroir. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the terroir of the earth. So that's where all the flavors come from. Is how they develop in the soil. So it really depends on where it's grown. That's why origins matter. That's why we're talking about like asking your barista, where is this from? Because every place in the world will have its own distinct flavor. So that's why when you hear people talk about like Ethiopia's, like I just was mentioning, that's huge right now. I mean, it's like kind of phasing out in specialty coffee because it's been around, it's been huge for years now. But that's why it became huge, was because it's known for its like very sweet qualities. Like I've had ones that legit taste like fruity pebbles, and it's like super sweet, but there's no sugar in it. It's just that's how the bean developed in its pod womb. And there definitely is a component of roasting to bring out and to amplify certain qualities. Like you could say, even though it's Ethiopia and it's like sweet naturally, like if the roaster wants to bring out more chocolatey elements in it, like it is resident within the bean, but there are certain ways you can roast to help the chocolate flavor come out a little bit. So there's like definitely an art to roasting, but the base bean is really what matters, is how it's grown, the attention that was given to the bean that was picked, the ripeness, the fermentation process, like all of that stuff is really the most important, as well as in addition to just its soil of origin.
So amazing. The detail, just in the way God created
I know,
so
it's
crazy.
amazing.
Okay, another question is, what does the roast do to the flavor of the coffee? Some taste burnt and some taste is mild.
Yeah, so that's a difficult question because it is tied to the bean, of course. So but like the mildness, I would say, is tied to the bean origin, but the burnt part could definitely be either roasting or the brew. So that's another aspect that you have to take into consideration when you're talking about how coffee tastes. Just because the tasting notes are on the bag, it does, like, one, it could mean the tasting notes are wrong, but two, it could also mean that you're brewing it wrong, which is definitely possible. Even for me, I brew things incorrectly all the time. So if you're like, say, leaving if the water is too hot for too long on the bean, it brings out the more bitter elements of the bean. What you're doing when you're, like, say, in a pour over, what you're doing when you're pouring the hot water over the beans is you're dissolving the solids. So what's in the bean, there's like the taste is being dissolved into the liquid. So what you're left with is just the husk after you're done brewing, which is why you can brew it again. But if you're dissolving too many of the solids, it's not activating the sugars that are in the bean, but it's actually burning them. Similarly to, like, if you're caramelizing sugar, if you caramelize it for too long, it's going to be just tar. And it's the same way for coffee. If you're caramelizing, we'll say that, for the sugar in the beans for too long, it's going to end up tasting burnt or bitter. And
Gosh, there's just all these things that we don't necessarily think about while we're just drinking. It's amazing.
In the roast itself, that's usually why I choose a medium roast, because that's somewhere in the middle, where it's not the inherent in the bean that it's going to be roasty from like a roast, but it's also less finicky than a white roast. So that's another factor in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're about at the end of our time. Hey, if you guys enjoyed today's live, please share it with your friends, and we can continue the conversation. This live will remain on our Facebook page, so continue the conversation in the comments, and we'll love to just stay connected to you guys. We're looking forward to our June issue releasing very soon. Can you believe it's June? Can't believe it.
No.
And so stay connected with us. We are here to engage with you, to enjoy the works of the writers that put so much time and effort into their articles, and just do life together. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you, Marisa, for sharing the space. And we will talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Bye.